Since the NBA introduced the Defensive Player of the Year award in 1983, the league has followed a couple very specific trends when determining the winner of the award. For one, the voters highly favor the center position. Since the award became a thing, a center has won the race 26 out of 41 times. The other major trend is that the league highly favors great defensive players on top-tier teams. In the league's history, 30 out of the 41 winners have played on a top 4 seeded team. And what's even crazier is that each and every one of those 41 winners were on a playoff team. So as you can see, the typical formula for determining the winner is simple, which is essentially who's the best defensive center of the top seeded teams. But what if we said screw the formula and instead simply gave the award to the player who was honestly the best defensive player that season, regardless of what position he played and regardless of how his team finished? Well, if we did that, things would change up quite a bit. Now, prior to the 1980s, the Defensive Player of the Year award did not exist yet in the NBA, meaning that for the 1970s decade specifically, I'll be handing out brand new DPOY awards instead of replacing them. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with my choices. In 1970, I'm giving the award to the New York Knicks superstar Willis Reed. This New York legend was one of the best two-way players of his era, and in this season specifically, he had his greatest impact on the defensive end. New York finished the regular season with a 60-22 record while finishing first in points allowed and first in defensive rating. The lion's share of that credit belongs to Reed, who played in 81 out of the 82 games. He was easily first overall in defensive win shares that season, and was first team all-defense for the center position. His teammate Walt Frazier and the Lakers legend Jerry West were both legitimate candidates for the award as well, but if you ask me, the data points to Reed as the most deserving candidate. In 1971, I'm giving the award to another Knicks star, Dave DeBusschere. The Knicks of the 1970s were absolutely stacked, especially defensively. Dave was a 6'6" power forward who was a double-double machine throughout his playing days. This guy was famous for playing with hustle and heart. His grit and grind attitude made him a menace defensively, as he smothered offensive players while forcing plenty of turnovers. And as a reward for his 81-game performance, he received the most votes for the NBA's all-defense team. His Knicks were first in points allowed and second in defensive rating, thanks in large part to his massive impact during his 36 minutes per game. Guys like Jerry West and Nate Thurmond were in the mix as well, but in my opinion, Dave had everything needed to be the Defensive Player of the Year winner. In 1972, the dominant Wilt Chamberlain gets the DPOY. For me, this is the obvious choice. The 71-72 Lakers had a historic record-setting season, where they won 33 straight regular season games, and finished the year with a 69-13 record. This group had plenty of great offensive weapons, like Jerry West, Gail Goodrich, and Jim McMillan. With a new head coach in Bill Sharman, who implemented a more up-tempo fast break offense, it allowed Chamberlain to focus even more of his energy on his rim protection and defensive rebounding. His scoring dropped 6 points per game from the previous season, but in return, it was the best rim protection that Los Angeles has ever had. Unfortunately, blocks and steals were not yet officially tracked at this point in history, but if they had been, they likely would have been some of the most insane defensive numbers that we've ever seen. In 1973, I'm giving the award to Wilt Chamberlain for the second straight season. At the age of 36, this was technically the final season of Wilt Chamberlain's career, but that didn't stop him from leading the league in rebounding at 18.6 per game, while playing all 82 games that season. Wilt was his usual monstrous self as a shot blocker, as he led his Lakers to a 60-22 record while finishing as the third best team in defensive rating. Dave Cowens of the Boston Celtics finished as a close second, as he led the best team in the league to have the best defensive rating overall. But when you consider their individual impact and Wilt's all-time great shot blocking, I still think he's the correct choice even in his final season. In 1974, I'm giving the award to the Knicks star Dave DeBusschere for a second time. At the age of 33, Dave was still as dangerous as ever defensively. He was harassing opposing forwards throughout the course of the season, and he was definitely the best in the eye test department, as he received the most all-defense team votes of any player that season. In a way, Dave was like the Dennis Rodman of the 1970s, in the sense that he didn't have the loudest defensive numbers, yet he still made a tremendous impact with his endless motor and with his harassing on-ball defense. Jerry Sloan of the Chicago Bulls and Kareem AbdulJabar of the Milwaukee Bucks also had tremendous defensive campaigns that I considered. But ultimately, Dave DeBusschere was still a bit too formidable to send the award somewhere else. In 1975, I'm giving the award to the Hall of Fame two-guard Jerry Sloan. He played 78 of the 82 games and helped lead his Bulls to be second in defensive rating and first overall in points allowed. Sloan was one of the best pickpockets of his era, as he was among the league leaders in steals per game, averaging 2.2. He was a lengthy wing who was tenacious and who never stopped moving defensively. He forced plenty of players into bad decisions, which is why he earned his spot on the NBA's all-defense team. The usual candidates were also in the mix, like Walt Frazier, John Havlicek, and Kareem AbdulJabar, but as far as I can tell, Jerry Sloan was the cream of the crop this season. In 1976, I'm giving the award to the all-time great center, Kareem AbdulJabar. He's been close to winning it a couple of times up to this point, but in this season especially, he dominated the rest of the competition defensively. This was the famous season where he won the MVP award despite the fact that his Lakers missed the playoffs. But that was mostly due to his lack of talented support, rather than being an indication of his own shortcomings. Kareem played all 82 games while averaging a monstrous 4.1 blocks per game, which also led the entire league that season. Along with that, he also averaged an impressive 1.5 steals per game. Beyond all of that, he also dominated the advanced analytics, as he was first in defensive win shares, first in defensive plus-minus, and second overall in defensive rating. I could talk about some of the other candidates, but it's pointless in my mind, since no one was close to the defensive greatness of the captain. In 1977, Bobby Jones of the Denver Nuggets takes home the award. At 25 years old, the man known as the Secretary of Defense was just reaching his prime. And at his prime, he was essentially known as the game's best defender. He was among the league leaders in both steals and blocks per game, and he always gave his best efforts as he ran up and down the floor like a gazelle. Jones was first overall in all defense team voting, and by quite the significant margin. He was also a monster in advanced stats, as he was second in defensive win shares, first in defensive plus-minus, and first overall in defensive rating. Bill Walton was also elite on the defensive end, and he was probably my second choice. The thing is, not only did Bobby have the edge statistically, but he also had the significant edge in availability, as he played in all 82 games compared to Walton's 65. In 1978, I have Bobby Jones repeating as the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year. He played 75 of the 82 games this year, and was honored on the NBA's All-Defense team once again. As usual, he was among the league leaders in blocked shots and steals per game, especially for his position. His team wasn't among the best defensive teams in the league this year, but he was the lone bright spot as he was all over the court with his speed, tenacity, and endurance as he always was. Now, Bill Walton was once again my runner-up, and honestly, if Bill had played 75 games that season just like Jones did, then I probably would have given him the award instead. But the reality is that Bill only played 58 games that season while winning the league MVP. For myself personally, you can't miss nearly a third of a season and still be expected to be seen as the most valuable defender. You provide no value when you're sitting on the bench in street clothes. And for this reason especially, Bobby Jones gets the repeat. In 1979, I'm giving the award to the captain, Kareem AbdulJabar, for the second time this decade. At 31 years old, Kareem was just as good as ever, as his rim protection was the best in the business. At an athletic 7 foot 2 inches with an even longer wingspan, Kareem was an absolute nightmare for those who challenged him. He averaged a league-leading 4 blocks per game and chipped in 1 steal per game as well. He was extremely available as he played in 80 out of the 82 regular season games. He was also second in defensive win shares behind Jack Sikma and second in defensive plus-minus behind Sam Lacey. Outside of Kareem, there were not many great defensive players on that Lakers squad, so they had to lean heavily upon his interior presence, and it worked tremendously. Guys like Dennis Johnson and Bobby Jones were in the mix as well, but to me, no one was more deserving of the hardware than a prime Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So what do you guys think? Are there any players who should have won the award instead? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.